Welcome to Tafad Tan. A sheep is on fire. The sheep is on fire. The sheep is on fire. Tafad Tan, live and direct. Yeah, Kroiso, welcome. In Japanese, doidashimashite. Welcome to Tafad Tan, and I am here, Ninja Pendragon. Also, we have Flap Sandwich in the house, and we have a genius, right, to us, Max Lewy. Max, say hi to everyone.
Hello there. Thank you for having me, Ninja. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you today. I really admire your what you do as well. Thank you.
Oh, Diakonva, which is thank you, Max, and that. We are here now, and we're going to have someone else here as well who will be sitting. Is it there?
Yes.
Yeah. What's his name?
Sam
will be sitting there, and you've probably seen him before on the earlier episodes. Now, Max, yeah, you are a writer. You write books.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the viewers a bit about what you write about, and also where you're from, and how you ended up in the city of God, Cardiff, and in the castle here today?
Well, this is my first book, and it's a book of poetry. 150 or so poems, exploring my unhappy experience with the mental health services here in South Wales, yeah, about a third of the book is devoted to explicitly exploring my experiences of the mental health system here and the dynamics involved in that system, the fairly rotten and toxic dynamics that I experience and that I feel are involved in the system, and the other 2/3 just about life, love, and society in general. And as you can see, we have here it's Dionysus, the Greek god of madness.
On a book.
Yes.
On Max Lewy's book.
Yes. The title is "Madness: A Form of Love," which is a reverser of the classic expression that love a form of madness. I can explain what that means a little bit more later, but obviously what you see is sort of the initial attempt to celebrate madness or mental illness. I prefer the term madness to mental illness simply because there's an awful lot rotten with the way so-called mental illness is approached, and it's generally seen as a progress when it in many ways it isn't a progress. So why not just go back to the old terms?
So we will let the viewers know where to get the book from. Yeah. And that. So what experiences have you had with the the mental health service in South Wales?
Yeah. So when I was 23, I was treated against my will. My parents instigated me being sectioned, which means that I was detained.
Why was that?
Yeah.
What happened at home?
Yeah, that was something explained to the viewers. That means that I was detained in a closed ward here in South Wales for about 6 months. Yeah. So well, that was I don't know. There, many things led up to that. I would say that what I was experiencing at that time was a kind of crisis of meaning, which we have people nowadays, like intellectuals like Jordan Peterson, talking about how young people, really do struggle for meaning in their lives, and he's drawn enormous attraction because of this real problem, which is linked to the problem of nihilism. In which philosophers like Nietzsche talked about.
Nietzsche.
So yes,
Is
yes,
that one of your
yeah.
favorites?
yes. So Nietzsche, would be one of my main influences. He has a very different approach to life, or philosophy of life, to the modern day psychiatrists and mental health industry. He gives it, more of a certain grandeur, and he talks, like, especially in terms of questions of value and nihilism and meaning. Yeah,
because some of you want to know that. What's the nihilism?
So nihilism is kind of when you begin to question fundamental values, or devalue fundamental values, and it's something that's if you read the philosophers, it's something that it's a direction you're going to be drawn towards, because it's so prominent in certain philosophers, and it's also very. It's also very, in a way, natural for what I call a nihilistic crisis to occur in early adult youth or something, because this should be a time of questioning, questioning the whys of existence. And it can be such a questioning of the whys of existence that it can become paralyzing.
Can I ask you a question? How did you get here?
To Cardiff today?
Yeah.
Well, I've been staying in Cardiff. I've only known Ninja, a few weeks now. Yeah.
And where were you before?
I was most of my life has been lived in the about 40 minutes south from here in the South Wales Valleys.
What was it like up there, South Wales?
So it was.
And the people.
Yeah. So I've led an enormously isolated life. Most people cannot imagine how unusual, and I was self-isolating before it was fashionable.
Was that why?
Yes.
Before it was fashionable. Yeah.
So can I ask you, why were you self-isolating? What was your reason for it?
Yeah, well, it was an unfortunate confluence of my early youth. So I mean, when I was 23, the part of the rationalization the doctors made of sectioning me was that I was spending too much time alone in my bedroom. Right?
Did you like being in your bedroom?
It's a mixed blessing, and sometimes these things are necessary. Sometimes, great solitude is necessary and desirable in certain ways. In other ways, but of course, in my case, the way that I was before 23, spending a lot of time in my bedroom. In many ways, this is very, very suboptimal, and I was deeply unhappy.
Were you writing? Yes. Did you have a diary? Were you writing while you was in solitude in your bedroom?
A little bit, yes.
You kept notebooks and stuff.
I didn't write much at that age, to be honest. I basically, a lot of my education had already taken place, and I draw on it now or in latter years, because I was already like widely read at that age, but I wasn't creative. I had not become creative at
Yes. And where were your parents from?
My dad is from London.
What part of London?
I think he's from Bushey. You would say. His parents lived in Bushey Heath.
Bushey.
Yeah.
And where's your mum from?
So let me just explain. My dad is Jewish, and his parents came over here during the Second World War from Austria and Germany. My mother is from Yorkshire.
Hey, up back home to the day,
yes.
To apples and pears. Yeah, I love the Yorkshire accent. I do.
Yeah.
She's from Yorkshire.
Oh well, yeah. So yeah, she's from Yorkshire. She she was a stewardess for a fair number of years, and then she met my dad and married my dad in a cuddly toy fair. Because my father owned a cuddly toy factory.
So they made cuddly toys.
Yes.
What sort, like
teddy bears? Yeah, teddy bears and all sorts of other ones as well. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Toy factory. And mum was an air hostess.
She was, yes. And she I don't know what to say about my mother. Well, she loves gardening. You know, she is
She loves gardening.
yes. She spent an awful lot of her life actually just in the garden. You know, sowing
Who was
seeds.
that one who used to do Compost Corner
yeah.
on telly? The gardener who used to teach us about gardening.
Never
Yeah,
heard
he
of
had a beard.
Oh, David Bellamy.
Yeah, David Bellamy. You've got a David Bellamy type of beard.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not sure who he is.
Do you like gardening? Have you done any?
No, I've never been practical. For me, I'm a gardener of ideas.
Ideas.
Yes,
I
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Same here. Yeah.
So, just talking about that a bit further, are you practical? Are you good practically with anything, or are you just a thinker? Would you say?
I'm mainly kind of a thinker, somebody who prefers to live his life in his head, and you know has done so.
So you're a Swede person, someone who lives in the Swede, yeah.
To a large extent, yeah. But I also, you know, I'd like to. For me, I guess, you know, life arc, you know, has a certain trajectory, ideal trajectory. You know, so during youth, for me, I mean, it's good to kind of like really be sort of thinking things through and really getting a really good understanding of the world. So philosophy is, as you get older, maybe you want to apply it, you know, in some way. So I would like to, you know, apply things more as I get older.
Who's your favorite philosopher?
So there's Plato, and Socrates, you know, Socrates. Yeah, he's somebody I really admire because he. Well, I mean, his life of poverty and pure questioning is just, you know, it's it's rightly, you know, it's the archetype of the philosopher, and it's bringing it, you know, into the public realm, you know, to really try and transform society, and also, you know, make it available to anybody who wants it, and also, you know, and it's a verbal thing, so it's not with writing, people can hide behind their books, right? They can hide behind their writing, whereas it's more difficult to hide behind an actual conversation, you know, in a conversation, you know.
How do you think Socrates changed society?
So Socrates, well, he made the search for, you know, truth and sort of a justification of the normal way of doing things, you know, the standard way of doing things, and the laws of society. He made this quest, you know, something which had a you know, a real presence and a real place in the public realm. And by doing that, he directed, you know, the minds of the Greeks at the time, or to anybody who actually, you know, pays attention to him and what he was doing, you know, to, you know, these higher questions.
Like,
yeah.
Any incidences for his questions, like he would? What kind of questions would?
So, you know, most people, they would take a lot of things for granted, and they will, for instance, take the morality and the justice of the society for granted. They would take the pursuit of this worldly goods, items, pleasures and power for granted. Socrates promotes the questioning of all of these things, so that individuals, citizens, actually become more serious about, you know, what actually morality and justice are, so that they can get better at it, and that they can be less unjust. They can be less a slave to the herd mentality of their society.
What's herd mentality? What's herd mentality, Max?
When you know, people just grow up in a society, they will just, you know, in a sense, collect the prejudices of that society by default to a certain extent, and it's tended to only be by undergoing a really deep philosophical interrogation, questioning, serious questioning, in which, you know, one dedicates pretty much one's whole life to it, or years of one's life, that one actually begins to properly criticize and become self-reflective of the prejudices one picked up growing up, and actually it achieves a superior point of view.
You spoke of poverty being almost like a noble thing with the
Yeah.
philosophers you mentioned. Is that a general view of yours? Is poverty something you look up to and respect, or can I ask you about that?
So, I mean, there are many advantages of poverty. There are advantages. Most people often won't see both sides of an equation, and they only see one side, and they will, completely neglect the advantages of something, which maybe because the advantages are just so taken for granted anyway that they don't even notice them. So, with poverty, I mean, the reasons why, for instance, that a philosopher, it would be for a philosopher or a ruler to remain in a state of poverty rather than a state of enormous material wealth and power and riches, because if, for instance, if a ruler is actually is actually rendered, or takes upon himself the sacrifice of worldly riches, then he or she is well, the variety of made. I mean, on one hand, I mean, they will obviously that would potentially that would show solidarity with the most oppressed and poor members of society. It would inspire the admiration and sympathy and respect of other people in society who.
But if you have a gold ruler,
Yes.
a plastic ruler, and a wooden ruler, the thing is, you can still draw straight lines. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. But I mean, well, with riches and power, a person can potentially do great harm, right? Well, they can potentially. Whereas if they have nothing and they're more, they're at the mercy of the public goodwill, in a much more imminent sense, immediate sense, then that's. Because what are we traditionally afraid of with rulers and leaders? We're afraid that they'll abuse their power, right? We're afraid that they'll use their power against the public interest. They'll hoard their power and that they will use it for detrimental purposes. If you have somebody who's a very, very talented person and they voluntarily choose to live in poverty, well, then they're not. They don't have that danger attached to them, I suppose, and
that's like this deciding for the person and judging from the perspective of others who have suppose abused the power, and it's not giving them the chance to. Whereas me now, I see it like behaviorism. Yeah, it's like in my case, I don't wear gold on the street. I used to. I don't do all of that. I, in fact, become less, not because of money or anything like that. It's because it's like, when you're looking through a camera, are you the same person as the one who's standing behind the camera? When you're looking through the camera, there's two total different perspectives. So when you understand like behaviorism and all those different things, it's like in Britain, it's like dressing for the occasion. If you're a butcher, you wear your apron and you take all these things. So it's assessing the group and being able to fit in with the group. Yeah. Whereas, so I see it as it should still be left to the choice of the person.
Well, there's definitely advantages with actual more disworldly kind of power and rulership. The cases can be made for that as well, but there's certainly enormous advantages also, and it shows potentially great nobility and willingness to sacrifice to give those things up as well, and concentrate solely on the purpose of actually educating people. Because what is money? What is money? I mean, and what is, you know, this worldly power? Well, what it essentially is it's getting people to do things for you. You know, in a way that sort of lords it over them in a certain way. You know, you have lots of money, therefore you can get lots of people to do things for you. You know, and in a sense they become your slaves, your servants.
But there's a new word for it now.
Yes.
I would put it now.
Yes.
I look at it as like, recycling, resource management. It's not about money. The value system needs to be changed now, totally changed, because at the end of the day, like, money how we used to see it's become digital, and this is changing and that. So I see like resource management, how you use resources, you know, and so wealth to me is resources.
I mean, there's certainly other sides to the argument, you know, that you know, I think if you look at most politicians or most philosophers, even, their moral integrity has been compromised by their pursuit of worldly power. And
what do you classify as worldly power now? Netflix.
Well, I mean, yeah, or any material riches, or well, there's worldly power in a more obvious, like, sort of violent sense, like the military, you know, and the police, I guess. There's that, you know, that which is more, it's closer to basically the underlying sort of nexus of power. And then, but also the general, it's just like anything, you know, any kind of money, or, you know, and a position in a hierarchy, higher position in hierarchy. I mean, power. It's a. I mean, in a sort of pure, sort of general sense, it's like the ability to, I guess, the ability to do things, or the ability to get other people to do things, or to get people to get. Yeah.
Influence.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Plato?
Yeah. So I mean, these thinkers. I mean, there's so much good in Plato. You know, he emphasized the, you know, the true, the beautiful, and the just. You know, his three pillars, and everything else kind of revolved around that. You know, in many ways, our society has lost touch over the centuries, or particularly over recent years and decades, with those essentials. We've you know, in a sense, we've become over sophisticated. You know, we pay attention to novelties or difficulties in these three ideas more than those central ideas themselves.
Facebook.
Well, so, you know, for instance, we had in the recent decades, we've had the notion of relativism has come to predominate in Western philosophy and Western society, and or subjectivism, where people just, you know, they emphasize the idea of how difficult it is to get to, you know, an absolute truth. You know, people. So that's what our society is. You know, our philosophical tradition has emphasized in recent decades, and that's, you know, gone all the way down to the education system, whereby young people, you know, are not focused on these three pillars in the way that,
these three pillars?
Well, truth, beauty, and justice, right?
Truth, beauty, and justice.
Yes.
How would you improve it? What do you think that we need to do to get back on track on truth, beauty, and justice? What would we need to do in society now?
How
would we change it?
I mean, yeah, just part of the battle is simply actually resuscitating these words, you know, and making them a more central part of young people's vocabulary. So, you know, So that's just one of the simple ways. But I mean, I should say that these are not the questions that I've actually been dealing with of late. I'm a little bit I'm prepared with some of these questions, but I mean, I can say something interesting, very interesting about Plato is that he specifically said in relation to what I'm doing here is that nothing good came to ancient Greece but through madness, and so this is the idea of a kind of divine madness or positive madness, which was very present in the ancient world and in writers like Plato.
Could you read us one of your
yes.
poems, Max?
Before you do that, could I just ask you, how does poetry and philosophy link, and why are you interested in both?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So there's lots of ways. Some people will say that poetry and philosophy are rivals in a certain sense, like that. Philosophy really tries to really understand things. Poetry likes to paint things a certain way, often to further a moral political agenda. But on the other hand, they're also also allies in many ways. And I mean, the philosopher Martin Heidegger, German 20th century philosopher.
Heidegger.
Yeah, he was very in favor of poetry, because he thought that philosophy had been bogged down in kind of disputes about, what we call propositional truth, or veracity. Is this true? Is this false? And the philosophers would write extremely complex and dry texts, trying to examine like the truth or falsity of a proposition. But Martin Heidegger drew attention to something else, which is sort of the truth as a kind of presencing of the world itself and society, and reality itself in the mind of the mind of a human being. And this presencing of the way things are, in a certain sense, is even more important than is something true? Is it false? And what poetry does, it through its mastery of language, and it's just naming of things. So it will call things to the mind of the reader through naming that thing. Like this is what language does. This is particularly what poetry does. Poetry presents a state of affairs to the mind of the reader, so that the reader can really drink that in, and that vision of the way things are, in a sense, informs their soul, so that their action in the world is informed by that contemplative understanding and vision of the relation of.
So is it good to consume poetry?
Yes, yeah, it's yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. So it's very, very, very good, because I mean, how we speak about things is very, very important, and poetry makes that into a fine art. So if you read poetry, if you're trying to understand the superior aspects of poetry, then you're going to raise your level of consciousness in a way which you won't do just by endless philosophical debate, even, or let alone the other sort of exchanges that often go on in mass culture, mass popular culture today.
So do you see it as like an escape from philosophy then?
No, I see it more as the culmination of it.
Okay.
So yeah, so philosophy is what you go to. You can really understand things. You have to ask lots of questions. You have to do things slowly, and it's quite clumsily to ask lots of questions. If you try to put a philosophical, your own philosophical monologue when just getting going onto paper, well, you probably can make a complete fool of yourself, because the process of getting to truth for the learned individual is just like it's often fairly chaotic and wouldn't make great literature. Poetry kind of like sums up what you found in a way that tries to presence the best of what you've brought back with you from to the public, in some way. Yeah.
Do you want to? Is it time for a poem from Max? Anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
After trying to eat your book, it tasted nice anyway. Can you read one of your poems?
All right. Sure.
Maximus.
This is called Hymn to the Medicated Messiah.
Hymn.
Pure air, shining sunlight, a conscience crystal clear, reflecting a soul so white, as the electrodes grow near. A compact bullet, the spirit, of bold and blistering merit, to cut through night's fog and slay the army of Magog. O valiant hero from beyond, lead us to the Elysian fields, with a wisdom unfeigned and a strength that never yields. Seek not to glib compromise, but with wild, penetrating eyes, let forth your insane rage upon this unsuspecting age. O great lunatic, O mad sage, write a glittering new page.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah.
It's very kind of you.
And where can we get hold of?
So this is on Amazon.co.uk, and so these ones here, and this is my other series. It's called Gaslit by a Madman, and that title probably requires a little bit of explanation. But gaslighting means to sort of make somebody feel crazy, or to present them as crazy when they're not, and what psychiatry itself does is exactly that. So the madman in the title it's not so much me or the supposedly mentally ill people. It's the doctors themselves who gaslit me, at least. I was gaslit by the mad doctor, the madman of the doctor. But it also does have a double kind of meaning, and because I talk about how questioning your reality, questioning whether you're crazy, is also very close to what philosophy in general kind of does, because this deep questioning is almost synonymous with that. So it has a double meaning, and in a sense, I am also gaslit by a madman. I am the madman who is gaslighting the world by really trying to get it to question its fundamental assumptions, in a way which philosophy has always done, but which inherently will potentially make people feel a little bit crazy, and they may be inclined to go through maybe similar nihilistic crises that I've been through in my life. I went through in my early youth, and so that's why it's very important for people to understand that if this does happen to anybody, or to any of my readership, or to the public in general, that the solution is not to come in like a bull in a china shop as a doctor and sectioning the poor patient, holding them in detention against their will, because that can be enormously damaging for somebody who's undergoing this deep these deep disquisitions and questioning already. They do not need that further disorientation, which is very, very violent, and becoming unfitting for a mind which is simply which is probably very subtle and undergoing a radical inner change and questioning.
Max, so where do we get that on Amazon now?
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
so the viewers or
So
anyone can get?
if you want to get this book on Amazon, you can get it on Amazon.com. You can get it on Amazon.co.uk. You can get it on other Amazon sites around the world, and you would simply have to type in Max J. Lewy to find this book, as long as Amazon have not discontinued it unbeknownst to me. Yeah, and the book is called Madness, a Form of Love, so you could type that in as well if you need to.
And the other one that you have?
The other ones, well, they're my author name here is simply Max Lewy, so you could just type in Max Lewy for that. It may not make much difference. And then the series title is Gaslit by a Madman, like I said. So if you type in Gaslit by a Madman, several books should come up, not just one, and they will all be different, but then in that series. Hopefully you should be able to purchase any of them for between 8 and 15, 16 pounds, depending on which one. So this is a very big one. It'll be about 16 pounds. Whereas you can get this one in black and white for about £8, or in color. This has collages as well in it. It should be about £15-16 in the colour version, but only about £8 black and white.
Cheers, Max.
Thank
And just want to ask you a couple of things on my mind. For myself, I often like a break from my mind. I feel myself going down a rabbit hole of madness sometimes, and I just want to escape. A few of my friends, like Sam in the audience there, advise like meditation and other ways of quieting the mind.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that thing?
I'm a 100% believer in those sorts of certain people at certain times, and I think that you can either do them a bit or you can do them a lot, and it's I mean how they operate and how they work is it could be, to talk about that could potentially take a long time, but yeah, there's definitely a value in those sort of techniques, and yeah, and they're
Tai Chi.
And what you just have to be careful of is that, and the same thing doesn't happen to you that happened to me, which is that precisely because you are engaging in these techniques and you're kind of experimenting them, perhaps for the first time, that you don't forget about the outside world, that that some people really really don't put much store by these things, and they simply interpret it as you behaving strangely, because the whole point of these techniques is, in a certain sense, to enact a change in the person, in the personality. That change may not be always immediately an enormous calm, like it is sometimes presented, a beatific calm. In fact, spiritual techniques, including meditation, yoga, they often have taken quite extreme forms, throughout the history, and they can often, in trying to, heal and improve the mind, create temporary perturbation, and particularly if you're not even aware that this perturbation is going to be is not going to be thought of. If you're not even aware of the danger that other people are going to think of this perturbation as insane and want to and potentially want to section you for it, then you can easily be drawn into a battle with the mental health system, which never needs to occur.
Yeah, you talked about people who are wrestling with questions in their younger years,
Yes.
and how it's important not to disrupt them with these aggressive medications and treatments.
Yes.
What would you say is the best path for these youngsters who are going through these questioning times?
Yeah.
Like puberty and all of that,
Yeah.
It's difficult in teenagers.
Yeah. Well, I say that young people, I think, in our society, really are not raised properly in a whole range of ways. So the room for improvement with many young people is very, very great. And it's not necessarily just about tweaking things a little bit here and there, although even a little thing can make a big difference. Yeah, so I mean, it's difficult to address this topic, so in such a brief span. But many young people today do not even have proper diets. They literally, I did not pay attention into that in any way until I reached my late teens, so that can make a dramatic difference.
Diets.
Yeah, just diets. I mean, just diet. I mean, but the. I mean, for me, I mean, the aim is to basically, reach the best that any young person can be, and it's often said that that we're all born geniuses, and then society makes us into dunces as the education system grows older. So there's a huge, enormous dearth of aspiration for young people, and in order to access it, I mean, the changes could be potentially very radical. And I mean, one of those things would be would we bring philosophy to more and more people and a younger audience, and thereby extricating them from just simply, like I said, the herd mentality of just going along with societies and the evils of society, and in a sense becoming more ambitious at a younger age of trying to understand the world objectively for themselves
and make a contribution as well.
and make a contribution to genuinely improving the happiness and the justice, the beauty, and the truthfulness of society as a whole.
Because a lot of the thing is like not being wanted. People don't want the contribution. People don't want you around. And a lot of the youth, like the leisure centres, have been closed down and that. So, what do you think about that? That for outlets for them to express themselves.
Well, so for me, I mean, one of the more ideal kind of approaches to young people and to education is the Socratic approach, right? It's specifically the Socratic approach, which is a one-on-one mentorship between a philosopher, a mature philosopher, and a young person, and it's almost impossible really to replicate the results of that in a classroom format, or just various sort of leisure activities, So I mean, it's not really my subject to talk about the closure of leisure centres and things like that. But I'm sure they have some impact on the well-being of young people. But my what I bring to the discussion is, like I say, a much more intense personal relationship between mentors. In the current system we call it mentorship, but maybe not in exactly the way that the current system operates, because everything within the current system is in a sense corrupted by the current system, which is very, very, very bad in many ways. But something like mentorship between an older, wiser philosopher and a somewhat ambitious, potentially ambitious young pupil, so that the process of philosophy is actually is experienced on a first-hand basis. So something like that, that's
like motivational speaker as well.
Absolutely. I mean, well, there are different points to make. I mean, so I don't. There's a question of motivation in young people, right? In schools, people are not actually led towards the motivations for what they're doing. Instead, they're just pushed into it when they don't particularly want to do it, and that in fact robs them of motivation, which they may otherwise have developed. So this is the way our school system operates. They're given lots of tasks without kind of knowing exactly why they're doing them, or without being given a feeling of that they really want to love to do them. And instead, it doesn't have to be like that. There can be more.
So there's no love there.
No, it can be more. You're speaking to the spirit of the child before you start ordering them around and telling them to do test after test and learn endless information. Because one of the main problems of our age is that we have endless information, confusing, complex information, without the fundamental spirit attached to it, and this is enormously detrimental for human health and for human life. We can hardly imagine how detrimental it can be, because there's almost nothing worse, for the human soul and for the human mind to be bogged down in endless complexity and information without the fundamental truths being in place, which is love and and I don't know, or will to power in each term, but some spiritual, real love of what they're doing, and motivation, like you say. So I mean, what we could do is, we could privilege more the idea of attaining enlightenment in the classical sense, in the Indian sense. We could speak about these ideas more to younger people, and that itself could be enormously beneficial. I mean, I don't know how things have changed in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years since like I was a child exactly, and what exactly young people are getting access to at the moment. I mean, because the thing is, there's the potential on the internet for these things to already be there, you know, for many, many young people.
Boot
But
camp.
what?
Yeah, a boot
Oh, well, that's
camp.
it's like completely different. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
on a boot camp holiday type.
Well, I don't like this sort of things at all. For me, the system is already inherently too dictatorial, and so boot camp would just be it's just like nightmare. It's a horrible thing. But
So the one-on-one
Yeah.
mentorship thing you talked about, is that something we've lost? Did we have it once?
Yeah, well, so they still have in Oxford, right? They still have in Oxford and Cambridge, right? They have so this is the thing that the elite keep themselves, right? This is the thing that our ruling elite already do and have amongst themselves, and well, they don't always have as much as they might have necessarily, or they could have. But you see, for decades, Oxford and Cambridge have been literally basically saving these essential techniques to themselves, right? They've been letting everybody else just be one of the public, they're just let them go along with their herd mentality. We don't particularly want to save them, we keep knowledge for ourselves. We're better off that way. You can think you're immoral and kind of rubbish beliefs, and we don't really care because we love the truth. We love it because it's valuable, not because we're just being hypocrites. We love it because it's valuable. We'll keep it to ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what's the answer for us then? Can we find a way, do you think, as the plebs?
So I say widen these mentorship ideas well, I mean, there's the problem. There's been I think there's a breakdown of trust in society, so that teachers often cannot teach. They're not allowed to teach the students because unless they're accused of something, whether it's a sexual violation or just generally being bullying and abusive, overly authoritarian towards kids. And this is enormously detrimental. And I think there's a conflation of different things, and there's a hysteria over the topic, which there's enormous damage to children and young people, where even though it's put forward often as being in their interest and in order to protect them, I mean, you see, so if you take the music of Morrissey, we can see it's gone from one direction to the other in exactly this way over the last 30 years. In the 1980s, Morrissey was making songs of of protest and anguish, about the terrible abuse and brutality in schools, about how the teachers were they were army officers, sticking it to the youth because they were jealous of the youth, That's like the Rushmore Ruffians and Headmaster Ritual and his album Meet His Murder. That was in the 1980s. Now, in the 2000s, and more recent decades, we see Morrissey has gone in the opposite direction because society has changed. And he's an astute observer of society. He's been a very astute observer of society. And he says, now the pupils... Now the teachers are afraid of the pupils, right? And so we've gone from one extreme to another without really managing to hit upon the ideal kind of mean or some beautiful mixture, on the way. And that's, very, very sad. And it needs to be addressed in some way or other.
Very interesting.
It's very, very difficult because obviously people are naturally, genuinely, and with reason, afraid of young people being abused by older people, right? Because it happened in the past. It does happen, but it also it's like kryptonite to genuine education and the Socratic relationship, in which which requires a genuine love and trust between the teacher and the pupil, and the general social atmosphere of trust of such a relationship, because a general environment of fear, poisons everything.
So you think that what's broken down as well then is the teacher relationship teacher relationship.
Yeah.
And fear has built up a lot. There's a lot of fear in the environment. So don't you think that hinders learning a lot?
Yeah. I think, people. I think people. Not enough people are saying what I'm saying. Not enough people are saying the importance of a really profound mentorship relationship between. Instead, we have sort of accusations of things like child abuse for sexual improprieties. Much more in the headlines and things like that.
Can you see yourself as being a mentor to younger people as you progress in life?
Yeah, that's always been my ambition. I think it's for me this is like the highest calling. It's or one of the essential callings of a mature of a human being, of a superior human being. It's to cultivate the next generation in the most noble and powerful, virtuous direction possible, obviously, and this is what, in a sense, this is what all literature, this is what all culture, this is what all learning is actually for. It's precisely just this: the transmission of the best things, best human things, from one generation to the next.
And we do have the power to overcome any difficulty we may encounter and to make our lives what we want it to be.
Not. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, Nietzsche said that anything unconditional is a sign of pathology, right? And sometimes bad things do happen to good people. But on the other hand, that is, it's a very, in general, it's a very, very good way of thinking it. That we are. Particularly when we're younger, we are the potential masters of our own destiny. We don't want to have that idea overridden by the modern ideas of determinism or social determinism, or classism, such that people are just total victims of their environment. Instead, we need to hold it's essential the idea that a human being can through their determination towards education, lift themselves up, and in a sense become. It's said that no man is an island, but in a sense, a man can, in a sense, become a much more secure, safe, and prosperous island unto themselves through the correct cultivation of their mind from childhood, onwards.
Because I don't want to go back. We don't go back to the days of picking bananas and putting them in boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time a bit, so should we have one more reading from Max before some closing words from yourself, Daddy Ninja,
Daddy Flaps? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, boss us another reading, Max. What a great mind.
So I'll read out one of my aphorisms this time from this other book. Okay, so this aphorism is like this book has a section which is reminiscent of Nietzsche, where there's just aphorisms which are isolated insights conveyed powerfully through a few brief paragraphs with a initial heading summing up what they're about. And this one's summed up by the heading "Psychiatry's Inversion of Health and Sickness." Right? I'm going to see that. Yeah, and I'll just read it out now. In all discernment between healthy and pathological behaviors, the key thing to be aware of is that the nature of the former is to be deliberate, willful action, realizing one's true will, to quote Aleister Crowley. Whereas that the latter is to be picked up unconsciously or half-consciously from one's environment, sometimes with a dimly conscious but burgeoning awareness that it is vulgar, stupid, or slavish. Psychiatry precisely inverts the true nature of this dichotomy, labeling healthy, i.e. willful liberation, as pathological, and unhealthy, slavish, unthinking conformity as healthy. It is the exact opposite of health. And this is summed up, in fact, in a small sentence by the ancient Islamic philosopher Al-Farabi, medieval Islamic philosopher, who has given a better definition here of illness than you will probably find in any modern textbook, because it pays attention to the essential philosophical basics of the situation. And here's the sentence. Its sickness is for its traits and the traits of its parts, to be traits by which the soul does not do its actions that come about by means of the body or its parts, or does them in a more diminished manner than it ought, or not as was its wont to do them. So just let me explain that very quickly before we go. Before
Sorry,
we
Max,
finish,
it might have to be very quick.
Okay.
The battery's about to die.
Well, so the
wrap us
idea,
up, maybe.
what is health? Health is the free flow of the will of the human soul attaining its proper ends. The soul attaining its proper ends through the body. That is what true health is. And you must not. We must not get away. We must not try to get away from that fundamental notion. It's the free flowing of the human soul and through the body, and not to be confused with other definitions which try to obscure that fundamental fact. As we
closing words
over
is
complex, over pretentious, newfangled definitions.
Shut up now.
Which
Right.
will obscure what
Shut the fuck up
known
now.
all along.
Yeah.
Because that's what so much of modernity
This is Tafad
is.
Tan.
That's what
Yeah.
so much of modernity is,
Until
obscuring of the essential
next
truth which
Monday.
is known all along.
This is essential. Shut the fuck up. Now, this is essential. This is Tafad Tan. We've had Max Lewy, an absolute genius. And we just like to say,
No.
Hoil Vow. Till next time.
Thank you.